to sort of kickstart some memories. Every time we do one of these, we ask this question, and I think it's a good one. Musical heroes. We've all had musical heroes growing up. Some of us have been lucky enough to meet them and to even work with them. And I wonder if any of the panel here today, the panel, make it sound very grand, any of you people, have you met your musical heroes? Have you worked with them? And if so, did they come up to your expectations, or did they disappoint?
Right, you met John McLaughlin, didn't you?
Who's first?
I met. Okay, I'll go right. So I've met a few actually. Been lucky. Yeah. I mean, I met John McLaughlin very early on. Well, I met him more than once, but the first time I met him, he was thinking about going to America to join Miles Davis, and this was a strange session. It was at Lansdowne, you know, and he hadn't done anything before. You know, he just said, I just left John Barry 7, would you believe? I was so young, and he said, do you fancy me putting your name up for the Georgie Fame gig? So ridiculous. I said, yeah, sure, it's fine. And the next day I left, and I got this message: you come round and see me about this gig, the dulcet Georgie voice, you know. It's just so funny. But I met him years later with Gary Husband at the Festival Hall, and he was great, you know. I mean, he was great as usual. Obviously, played fantastic. But you know, Gary said, well, he said the thing is, a lot of the early things like that session, I was going to remind about this. He said he doesn't really seem to remember those things. He said anything more than 20 years ago could be difficult. So I said, yes. I said to him, I said, John, you won't remember this, but do you remember that session? And he, you know, sure enough, he didn't remember. When I said kind of Lansdowne and General Vibe, he said, oh yeah, I remember that. He said, weren't they terrible, those things? And that was it. But yeah, I'm lucky to meet him. The sort of idol that I think both Mo and I are both idols is Gil Evans, of course. And we met him, and we were both lucky enough to play in his band. So that was fantastic.
That's amazing. Can I just add to that? I was on tour in America with Phil Collins, and I rang Ray just to see what was happening. He said, when you get back, you're going on the road with Gil Evans. It was the most unlikely and amazing statement.
Yeah. Well, no one else could do it, you see. I've been phoning bass players all day. What can you get? What can you do? That was great. Yeah, let's give it a try. It was a great involvement, wasn't it? That was a great friendship.
What was yours, Mike?
Mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was born in West Hampstead, between West Hampstead and Kilburn.
Is this a blues?
No. I woke up one morning. Don't do that to me. And my local theatre was the Gaumont State, Kilburn. And I was 15 years old in 1958. And I went to see Buddy Holly.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I sat and I watched Buddy Holly. And I tell you the thing that came home to me, guys, more than anything else. And I can say this because there are some great musicians here. I am or was a singer who played guitar. There is a difference here. But when I saw Buddy Holly up on stage with no other guitarist on there, just bass and drums, and I watched him play nearly, well, all the solos in chord shapes, and I just could not believe this. And because I knew the theatre so well, when the show finished, I ran up the aisle out. It was a huge place, the old Gaumont State. And I got to the stage door before anybody else got there. And I banged on the door. This little guy came out and said, "What do you want?" So I said, "Can I see Buddy Holly?" He said, "Don't be fucking stupid." He slammed the door. So I did. I knocked again. I knocked the door open. This guy said, "Please, can you just ask him?" He said, "Yes, fuck off." Slam the door again. Next thing I know, I tapped about sort of 2 or 3 minutes later, door opens, there's Buddy Holly standing there with the glasses, with everything. I looked at him and you know what you do when you meet someone, or you met someone in those days who was very famous, you blurt out the first thing that comes into your head. And I said, I'm learning to play guitar. He says, you go on doing that, son, you're going to be a star. And I thought, oh, Buddy was my idol. So yeah, and he just seemed such a nice guy. That's all.
Yeah.
Lovely. Great.
Yeah, they're great. They were great days. So naive. It's fantastic though.
Yeah, I was.
I've had a few that, I mean, it just sounds like, we're very lucky that the kind of people we get to meet, I guess. And I mean, one of the strangest ones for me was before I was even in the business, when I was a kid. I think, my dad used to be a guitarist. So in the sort of summer and Easter holidays, he used to join up with a guy called Pete Winslow and the King Size Brass. And they would do like the celebrity spot on a P&O cruise. And so the family used to just shoot off for the summer holidays. And the deal was for the musicians then with P&O that the whole, either they could get a fee for doing 3 weeks on a cruise ship, or they could take the family along free of charge. So all the musicians used to do that, and as kids we would all go along with them. And we stopped in Miami, and I must have been about 13 years old, and there was this little bar in Miami where Jerry Lee Lewis was playing. And he did a gig, and it was full out Jerry Lee Lewis rock and roll, but there were only about 20, 30 people in this club. And at the end of it, we were just, as I was walking to go to the loo, the dressing room was right next to the toilet, and he was just sat in there and walked in and met Jerry Lee Lewis, which was just unbelievable.
Fantastic.
But I mean, the strange thing is with our business, obviously, one of the strangest ones for me, the guy I sort of grew up with in studios, James Guthrie, ended up, we started at Mayfair together, and then we moved to audio together. And James, well, you all know James, don't you? And he ended up getting a call to do The Wall with Pink Floyd. And when he finished the album was doing really well. They did the first tour, the original Wall, in LA and New York. And James called me up and said, could I go out there and help him put the show together and do the front of house sound with him, because it was it was the biggest show that's ever, at that time, that had ever been produced. And for me, it was just the strangest thing, because it was so early in my career. It was 1980, and I think I'd only started in about, I don't know, 74, 76. So I was fairly young in my career. And actually, the last time I had seen Pink Floyd, I'd paid for a ticket, and I was sitting in the audience watching Dark Side of the Moon, and now suddenly, 4 years later, I mean, beyond my wildest dreams, when I was sat at Earl's Court watching Dark Side of the Moon, did I think I'd be sat in front of the mixer working with them in LA? Just astonishing. But I've got one little one which was fantastic, was Pavarotti. I was working with an Italian artist called Lucio Dalla, and he, as an offshoot from that album, unfortunately the album never got completed because Pav passed away, but we were in pre-production for a modern sort of opera which was written by Lucio Dalla, and it was written between Lucio Dalla and Pavarotti. And we did a number of sort of preliminary sessions on it and preliminary recordings in Austria. And the reason it was in Austria was Pav was, in one of his rehabilitation, he was huge, he was absolutely huge. And he was in one of these rehabilitation clinics. And the very first time I met him, I mean, Luciano Pavarotti, I mean, this guy's an absolute legend. And we arrived that evening at this sort of health farm, massive place. But the way they worked it, it was a hotel, and one side was for the guests that were on the program, and the other side was for normal residential guests. So the ones that were on the program were eating spinach leaves and lettuce, and the guests were eating steaks and whatever you wanted, you know. And the very first meeting with him was at a dinner table in the restaurant of this health farm. And I was really excited to meet him. We went down, it was Lucio, myself, and him at a table. And we sat down and felt really guilty about ordering food. And I ordered spaghetti alla arrabbiata. And his sort of lettuce leaf and a carrot arrived on a nice big white plate. And my spaghetti arrabbiata arrived on this big bowl, and he just looked at me and he said, "Posso?" He had a funny sort of squeaky talking voice, which was quite extraordinary from his singing voice, but he used to speak a little bit like that, you know. He said, "Posso annusare la spaghetti? Can I smell your spaghetti?" I said, "Yes, of course," and handed him the bowl. And he got this bowl of pasta in front of him, and then his animal instinct just took over, and he just buried his face in it, and he came up and he had pasta all over his face. And I mean, wonderful experience. Bless his heart, an amazing man, absolutely astonishing man.
Wow.